Well, thank you, Stefano. I am dealing with some criticisms that have been leveled against Fratelli Tutti and more broadly against Pope Francis. Is Pope Francis a communist? As you know, the question is widely debated, especially in the United States of America. Many people accuse Pope Francis of being a communist. Is he really? Of course he's not. He's not a politician and not even a philosopher of politics. He repeats the age-old Christian social doctrine in the new context of today's economy and society. Nevertheless, this doctrine resounds in today's context with a different timbre. And this is what causes so much apprehensions for some statements of the Pope in one section of our public opinion. This different timbre is what we want to investigate in the present paper. We will also register similarities and differences with some aspects of Marx's thought that perhaps deserve to be recovered after the death of Marxism. We still need a movement for the liberation of the human person. After the collapse of Marxism, many have concluded that capitalism has definitively triumphed. Many thought that the market alone was sufficient to mediate all human relations, all human interactions, and to create a just society. A further consequence that was drawn was that with communism, also the great experience, the great tradition of the workers' movement had arrived to an end. Also, a large part of the left shared this opinion and substituted the modernization of sexual mores to the quest for social justice. I remember having discussed this issue with Alberto Metol-Ferré at the beginning of the 90s. Metol-Ferré was a great friend of mine and of Jorge Mario Bergoglio also, and perhaps the greatest Latin American of the last part of the 20th century. Alberto thought that with the end of Marxism, the struggle for social justice and for the liberation of the oppressed was not going to cease. Marxism was wrong, but the oppression of the poor was real. Marx had led the workers' movement in a blind alley, but the fall of communism would not bring with itself the end of the workers' movement, but only the beginning of a new stage in this history. In this stage, the Catholic Church could and should try to take the leadership of this movement. It seems to me that this is the purpose of the encyclical Fratelli Tutti. Francis' criticism of capitalism is ethical. The existent system is measured with the ethical measure of the gospel and is found unjust. One part of mankind is starving, while another part wastes an enormous amount of resources. The system is aimed at the maximization of exchange values and not to that of use values, that is, of goods useful to make life better for man. Of the enormous amount of money capital existing in the world today, only a small fraction goes to investment to create jobs and produce goods. The largest part goes to speculations, to make money out of money without going through human labor, salaries, and the development of human society. Men live in order to make money, instead of making money in order to live. Those who are not useful for the purpose of making money are easily discarded as superfluous. 40 years ago, we would have said, we are worried about exchange value, not about use value. Many people are considered just as waste. Those who can make money participate in the circle of production and consumption. But are they happy? They are not, because they are alienated. The concept of alienation that helps us to understand Francis is not that of Marx, economic alienation, but rather that of Wojtyła. Man is really by himself that is, man is really not alienated when he is a member of a living community animated by love and reciprocal care. I do not expand on this point. Monsignor Minera already has said all what has to be said on this point. Man is ordered through his essence to be an I, but also to be a we. The person fulfills her ultimate destiny through an act of belonging to other persons in love. The real wealth of personal life consists in the relations of reciprocal belonging in love that have been established in the course of one's life. If we understand this, then we realize the reason why the preferential option for the poor does not contradict the commandment of universal love. The system of structural sin that condemns the poor to a life of hardship or a death of hunger condemns at the same time the rich to a life of alienation and of inauthenticity. Here, Francis walks on the footsteps of another great Latin American, honorary Latin American, Bartolomé de las Casas. The great Dominican friar pitied the material plight of the Indians, but was even more worried about the salvation of the souls of the Spaniards. Francis' critic is an immanent critic. He's not an economist and does not propose a different model. He encourages us, however, to rethink the anthropological presuppositions of the current economy, while he points out its apparent shortcomings. The admonitions of the Pope encounter here some reflections that are growing in the world of professional economists. These reflections are not only ethically motivated, they rather arise out of the fact that the real empirical functioning of the economy does not correspond to the models proposed in the handbooks. Let us consider one point. Francis has expressed more than once his distrust of the idea that the welfare will trickle down through market mechanisms and reach in the end also the poor. We have sound logical models that make us sure that the market tends to a position of equilibrium with the full employment of all factors, labor included. So we know we have perfectly functioning logical models that tell, from Bastiat up to Mises, that tell us that no, the welfare will trickle down. This is an a priori knowledge, but it is contradicted by the empirical existence of huge numbers of unemployed in many world economies. John Maynard Keynes has already observed that the model of marginalist economy works only in the long run. But in the long run, we will all be dead, and workers would like to find a job in the limited time of their lives. The model, however, presupposes a perfect market in which capital and labor can move freely to exploit the better opportunities without barriers of any kind, with a free access to the productive factors under equal conditions. This is not, however, the case in the real world. In the handbooks, yes. In the real world, no. The real markets are full of barriers that create monopoly or oligopolies, or monopoly or oligopoly conditions. And only a sound economic policy can keep the markets open. The poor have only a very limited and unequal access to the market. When they have any and are not completely discarded, they do not possess the required skills and qualifications. They have no access to credit. Very often they cannot even register their small enterprises for activity in the market. What is the reason of this difference between the theoretical and the practical functioning of the market? The maximization of the value production is one of the driving forces of real markets, but not the only one. The interest of an elite to preserve their power positions is an equally powerful force that shapes the real markets. The game is rigged in favor of the powerful. It is fully legitimate to demand that this disturbance be balanced by sound policies empowering the poor. Let me quote the great chancellor of the German reunification, Helmut Kohl, who was a good friend of mine, And he used it to say that I am the best friend of the market and the worst enemy of the marketeers, because they believe in competition until they have reached the top. When they have reached the top, they want to close the competition to preserve their power. So we have a market that is tremendously influenced by power structures. Is Pope Francis against capitalism? I think that Pope Francis stands exactly in the vision of Centesimus Annus. If we identify capitalism with the market, no. Pope Francis fully recognizes the positivity of market mechanisms. If we pretend market mechanisms to be sufficient to mediate all human interactions, the Pope will tell us that this proposition is false and may serve as an ideological cover for the manipulation of the market against the poor. He will rather advocate a political orientation of the market to put it in the service of the poor and of mankind at large. Thank you.